Welcome back to Patreon. So I'm so excited. This is highly requested. And I've been wanting to talk about shadow work for a very long time, but I felt like people were not ready. But I feel like my collective is now ready. And I feel like you're starting to see the bigger picture when it comes to just things I've said within the last few years because this is truly the work that I have done on myself. And I'm so excited to share this with you all because this has changed my life so much. It has changed my inner world. It has changed my outer world. It has changed my relationships. It has changed my relationships with money. It has changed my relationships with friends, just life. I love it because I feel like I'm on the other side. And I remember when I was in the trenches and it was dark and I couldn't see. And now I'm on the other side and I'm in the light. I'm in the rain. I'm in the sun. I'm in the heat. I'm in nature. I'm experiencing a rainbow. Like I'm everywhere because I've done the work on myself to be able to enjoy the simple things in life where it doesn't take much for me to be happy anymore. And I love that. So I just got chills saying that, but it's so true. And when you do the work on yourself, when you really start to get into shadow work, it really does change your life. So this is my biggest kept secret when it comes to my level up. This is the foundation of my elevation. This is this is what I laid down to be able to stand confident, strong, sovereign, to be feminine, to be loved, to be known, to be seen, to also be supported, to be open, to be in a space of being able to receive. It's been a game changer. So I'm so excited to share this with you. Also, let's get into shadow work. Okay. First, I want to start off because I have my notes. I got my note cards. I got my notes. So I will be looking down a little bit here. But first off, what is the shadow? The shadow is who you fear you are. And this tends to include your flaws and rejected traits, maybe even things that you consider to be undesirable. So, I'm going to be talking about Dr. Carl Jung, and I'm going to be using the Jungian psyche diagram. Okay, so let me pull this up. I'm going to be covering my face here for a little bit because I wanted to blow this all the way up. So, Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist. He believed in a psychoanalytic approach to focus on integrating the conscious and unconscious elements through a process called individuation. He aimed to achieve wholeness by exploring collective unconscious archetypes and balancing the psyche. So, if you're coming from religion, if you have a background, if you have a foundation of religion, if you come from the framework of religion, typically shadow work is not something that you're really taught because you're first taught to shame because it's labeled sinful. So when it comes to doing shadow work, you don't shame, you embrace, and then you transform. I come a, I come from a religious background and I always felt shameful when it came to things that made me feel flawed or rejected traits that people didn't want to accept in me, but were a part of me. So a lot of times I felt shame, I felt small, I felt guilt, I felt regrets, I felt really shitty about myself, to be honest. Um, and it was because, I have this thought process that I don't really think religion is the problem. I really think that it's how it's used and how it's taught and how it's been integrated into our society. So we live in a religious dominated culture and society where oftentimes people project shame on you. So then this causes you to retreat. It causes you to feel the need to protect yourself with your ego or to wear a mask to protect yourself, like a persona. So typically, we never get to our shadow because we're creating these protective barriers from the outside world, like having a mask, a persona, having a ego, which typically the ego is your conscious identity. The persona is your mask, it's what you show the world. And then your shadow is hidden or it's suppressed. It's the parts of you that you feel the need to suppress. And then yourself, sometimes we never reach our whole self, our true, authentic self, our integrated versions of ourself because we can't get past the shame. We can't get past the feeling small or feeling awful about ourselves or feeling like we have to change who we are in order to embrace ourselves. So we never make it to complete wholeness and we never integrated our true being, which is your authentic self. So, and I'm going to go over this diagram. So you have the outer world, you have the persona. The persona is what you project to the outer world. The ego is what you use to consciously protect your self esteem. And then your shadow tends to be self destructive, but it doesn't have to be. Your shadow can also protect yourself, but it tends to self destroy or causes you to be at war with yourself and your shadow because you haven't embraced it. And if you look at this diagram, you see the ego. I always talk about how the ego truly protects the self esteem, but so does the shadow. But typically, the shadow works against your true self because you tend to refuse to embrace it because you feel shame. And then we have animus, which is the intellectual force behind your, I want to say, your conscious. I always forget. It is, it is the, let me pull up my notes. I think I jumped ahead. No, I'm sorry. Okay, so animus is the masculine intellectual force that balances emotions. And then anima is also the feminine intellectual force that balances your emotions. But your animus and your anima, depending on if you're a man or a woman, it tends to be opposite. So if you're a woman, then your animus is out of balance. It's not integrated. And then typically, if you're a man, then your feminine intellectual force that helps balance your emotions is unbalanced and it's not integrated. So it tends to be the opposite depending on if you're a woman or a man. So then you have your inner world. Your inner world is typically like your inner thoughts, the dialogue that you have with yourself. And then here's the outer world. Now, you also have uh, personal consciousness. And I feel like this is when I do my collective readings, you have, I always say collective energy. you tend to be able to relate, or you may feel like you found your tribe because the personal collective consciousness tends to connect to your inner self. So if you find me to be relatable, if you find other people in the Discord or Patreon group or just my comment section on my YouTube channel, it's because we share that collective consciousness, which connects to our true, authentic self. And then you have the consciousness unconscious and the unconscious. This is the other parts of ourselves that tends to be our blind spot when it comes to our thought process. So I always use the example that I recommend therapy, because if you go to therapy, then your therapist can bring forth the unconscious consciousness that you carry that you're not aware of, but it's also connected to self, your self identity, your self esteem, which would ultimately help with self improvement. So let me make that small. So I wanted to go over that. I wanted to also get into shadow work. So, shadow work, and I wanted to go over that first because I want you to get a clear picture and understanding of how this is going to benefit your outer world and your inner world, and how it creates a better relationship with yourself, your ego, your persona, your shadow, your masculine and your feminine energy, which is the intellectual force when it comes to your emotions, and that creates a better inner world for yourself. So now everything is working within together as a team, and you're not having these conflicted issues where you're causing yourself to be at war with yourself. Like, prime example is sometimes your persona it doesn't represent your true self. It doesn't represent your inner world at all, but you use your persona to protect yourself, to protect your ego, and then you use your ego to protect your self-esteem. But how do we create an inner world where everyone is on the same page and we're all working together as a team? And that's what shadow work is going to help you integrate within yourself so that you can become whole. And this is why I love shadow work. So, shadow work can help you heal your inner child and learn more about your present self. So, this will also improve your relationship that you have with yourself, and also being able to develop that through knowing who you are, which helps develop and improve your self identity. And it can even be the start to repairing relationships that you have within your life, starting with self and then also the outside world. Okay. Shadow work can help you uncover things like where your anxiety may stem from and the reason behind it, and how your behavioral patterns form because of it. Okay. Also, shadow work does not replace therapy. If anything, it aids your therapy journey. The secret sauce is therapy and shadow work and candle work. Therapy, your therapist highlights your blind spots when it comes to your self awareness, challenges you on your thought process, your psyche, aids you when it comes to your mental health, helps you unpack your trauma, your triggers, your insecurities, your fears, your projections, your behavioral patterns, and your life experiences. And then candle work helps you manifest. Over here, when it comes to your therapy or your therapist, a good therapist will help you with your blind spots when it comes to your self awareness. That's clearing energy when it comes to shadow work. And then that's clearing energy when it comes to your manifestations. It's the secret sauce. So if you want to manifest your dream life and you want to elevate and you want to live a certain type of way, get therapy, some mentorship, some counseling, do your shadow work, and manifest. That is the secret formula. That is my formula. I have never put it in just plain bullet proof or bullet in a bullet layout, but I'm saying like that's my method. That is my formula. And I'm trying to think, should I put this in a book? But that really is my formula and it works extremely well. And when it comes to I have a system within my manifestation candle work. I have a system when it comes to my shadow work, and I have a system when it comes to mentorship, counseling, and therapy. Okay, so each system will help you create the life that you desire. So create that system, use that formula, and I know that it works for a fact. So you can use that and it will help you change your life in a real way and fast. I'm not saying that just to say it. I'm being so real, like very fast. Because people are always telling me, "Oh my God, Yanni, you're so different. You've changed so much." That's my formula and it works. And if I ever need to go back to the basics, I will go back to the basics: therapy, shadow work, manifest. Okay. So, shadow work can be a tool to use to help you with your mental health as well. So, I will say this because this is just me being real as someone that went to therapy and it was costly. If you can't afford therapy, then do your shadow work. Get a mentor coach or something. But don't be paying more than you would pay for a mentor coach than you would a therapist. A therapist is going to help you, in my opinion, the best. If you can afford a therapist and a mentor coach and then you do shadow work, that's even better because your mentor coach tends to hold you accountable but also motivate you. And then your therapist is going to help you better uh analyze your life from an analytical clinical position and standpoint, which is very helpful. So if you can combine all that together, great. Um, and how often you go, would I would just base it on what you can afford, to be honest. But if you can't afford a therapist or you can't afford a mentor coach, shadow work will be your best friend. Okay. So how to spot your shadow? You can spot your shadow if you can't see a therapist or a mentor coach, because a mentor coach should also be able to help you spot your shadow as well. So, how to spot your shadow? You spot your shadow with being able to pay attention or at least question yourself when it comes to your outward projections. The projection that you give to others, which typically is how you're being perceived by the outer world, which that tends to come from the persona that you project. So, question: what persona do I project to the outer world? Being able to question that. Also, uh, how the outside world, how you project verbally onto the outside world through your opinions, through your emotions, through your behavior, through how you treat others, how you communicate with others, how you show up in relationships. Being able to question your projections, but you have to be self aware enough to be able to know how to question. So that's why I would recommend either a mentor coach that can help you spot your shadow or a therapist that can clinically evaluate your psyche to then be able to help you spot your shadow. Whichever works, works. Okay. Also, another way to spot your shadow, which typically your therapist will help you with, or your mentor coach will help you with, are the patterns. And if you can't afford, again, a therapist or a mentor coach, then you would have to do this within yourself. So you would have to pay attention to the patterns that you repeat in your life. The patterns when it comes to your life, your behaviors, and your experiences. So I created that pattern recognition video, because you have to be able to do that in order to do your shadow work. And if you feel like you're not good at that, or you struggle with this area because you struggle with having a good level of self awareness, then you would need to get a mentor coach or a therapist. And you need someone that is unbiased, that will challenge your psyche, that will question things that you do, the experiences that you have, the memories that you have, the trauma that you have. You need someone that is a safe person, or a person that creates a safe space for you to be vulnerable in that way. You can't do that with just any and everyone. So be careful about that. And then, if you don't have anyone, or you can afford to go to someone that will, or that can create that space for you, you have to create that safe space within yourself. And you have to create a safe space where you don't judge and you don't shame yourself. You don't criticize yourself. You're real, you're accountable, you're responsible, but you're not shaming, you're not guilt tripping, you're not criticizing negatively. You're not beating yourself up or beating yourself down. That's not a safe space. And if that is what you do, you have not created a safe space within yourself where you can truly be vulnerable. And you have to do that if you're going to do shadow work. Like, you have to have a no judgment zone, a no shame zone, a no guilt zone, a no, I'm making myself feel small zone. You have to create that safe and vulnerable space within yourself to unpack, to question, to critically analyze your projections and your patterns within your life. So you can't do that if you've created a hostile environment within yourself, your inner world. Okay. You can't create that if you're judgy and you don't have any compassion for self. You have to work on that. And that may be where you start when it comes to your shadow work, because nothing else will be successful if you don't. So you may need to start there. And sometimes your therapist will help you create that vulnerable space, because you go to your therapist or you go to your mentor coach, and they're supposed to create that type of atmosphere where it's safe, where you can be vulnerable, where you can be authentic, truthful, and honest when it comes to your behavior and your experiences without feeling shame or judgment. So keep that in mind. And then the last step is introspection. Ask critical questions about the awareness you've gained through analyzing your projections and analyzing your repeated patterns. So I'm going to blow this back up. So we're going to get into Dr. Carl Jung's psyche diagram. So let's talk about the animus and the anima. So the animus is masculine energy and the anima is feminine energy. And typically, women struggle with animus, and then men struggle with anima. So let's get into why. So animus represents the con- contrasexual side of a person's soul. I repeat, animus represents the contrasexual side of a person's soul. So the animus is the inner masculine in a woman, while the anima is the inner feminine in a man. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because today we see a lot of people that are unhealed. You see it on social media. Doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, and you see how they project, right? And they present themselves with this persona, and then they tend to project this unhealed, imbalanced ego to express themselves. And they tend to be, the men are sassy and then the women are aggressive. Well, it's because they have an imbalance animus, a woman does, and then a man has an imbalance anima. Okay. So again, the animus is the inner masculine. As you can see, both men and women carry both. So again, the animus is the inner masculine in a woman, while the anima is the inner feminine in a man. So this is a bridge right here. This is a bridge that acts as a mediator between the conscious ego and the deep collective unconscious. So a lot of times this is where people project things on social media. Like you'll see men generalize, you'll see women generalize about the opposite sex. And eh, they're doing it from a place of unconscious because they're not aware that they're imbalanced because they don't have a good level of self-awareness, that they're imbalanced when it comes to their masculine energy or they're imbalanced when it comes to their feminine energy. So the function is often associated with logic, and I'm referring to animus. So this is a function that is often associated with logic, reason, order, or assertiveness. When unintegrated, it can manifest as an inner critic or rigid, opinionated thinking. So if you are a woman and you're struggling with this inner critic and it's very rigid and it's a strongly opinionated way of thinking, but it tends to be shadowy because it's unintegrated. So that means your inner critic is probably a bully to you or is very mean to you or hypercritical of you or maybe hyper fixated on certain things when it comes to others because it's really coming from a place of insecurities, but you're projecting it from an unintegrated place within yourself as a woman because your animus is imbalanced and it's not integrated. So, shadow work is going to help you integrate this, where you become less opinionated negatively, where you're constantly having this inner critical dialogue about yourself, and it tends to be very rigid. And again, this may stem from your religious background or foundation if you have one, or it could be a parental figure that you experienced that maybe was an authoritative figure and it create whatever type of relationship that was created this unintegrated uh animus where now you are just this person where you have this inner criticism and it's very rigid and it's harsh opinions and you tend to carry that within your inner world and it may cause you to feel like you're at war with yourself. So the whole point of shadow work is to get every parts of yourself aligned and integrated. So we're trying to get your persona on the same page with your ego and your ego on the same page with your self-identity and your self-esteem, and also to get your self-esteem and your self-identity on the same page with your shadow, and also being able to balance out the intellectual forces, whether it's your animus, which is your masculine energy, or your anima, which is your feminine energy, so that you can have a balanced regulated nervous system. And then this creates a healthy inner world where you're not your biggest critic, where you're not super rigid and overly opinionated in a negative way. So, the shadow animus is the deeply negative or aggressive relationship with your inner masculine energy. That part of your animus can become a part of your shadow. And typically, that is what happens. So, your masculine energy tends to become a part of your shadow because it's not integrated properly, it's imbalanced. So, you would need to balance that masculine energy out. You can do candle work, you can do journaling. That would help a lot. So let's speak on anima. So anima represents the inner feminine within the male psyche. Anima is about connection, intuition, and feeling. Typically, we see men struggle with this a lot. However, even though I'm using genders, if you know you're more animus dominated, then what I'm saying would apply to you. If you know that you're more anima dominated, then you know that I'm speaking to you when it comes to me breaking down each one. But it really depends. But typically, men struggle with the anima and women struggle with the animus. Okay. And it's the opposite. Okay. So anima represents the inner critic. Let me pull this back up. So anima is all about connection, intuition, and feeling. Anima serves as a bridge between the conscious ego and the deep unconscious. So the parts about yourself that you do identify with and the parts about yourself that you don't identify with, either because you don't have a good level of self-awareness or because you refuse to identify with it because you feel shame or guilt. So anima serves as a bridge as well between the conscious ego and the deep unconscious. It is the personification of all the feminine psychological tendencies a person possesses but may not consciously identify with. So anima integrated, which is when something is in balance and is healthy, is when someone is in tune with their uh emotional when they're in tune with their emotional intelligence, their empathy, strong intuition, gut feelings. And it's not that you're in tune, but you also trust it. Okay. You have the capacity for deep, meaningful relationships, creativity, and flow. And well, when it comes to your creativity, you are in a state of flow within either your work or your personal life. So there's a flow within your life. There's not a rigidness. It's flowy, it's airy, it's balance, it's rhythm, it's harmony. You have that within yourself and it just flows. Anima shadow, though, is typically ignored. Like you ignore your emotions, you ignore your intuition, you ignore your gut feelings. You don't have creative flow within your life when it comes to your personal life or your work life. Okay, so this is when you can't explain or you have like unexplained moods or like touchy moods or touchy subjects where you easily get triggered because you are hypersensitive. This is when your anima is in its shadow and it's unintegrated. And also, you have emotional, I'm trying to think, what did you have emotional sudden outburst where you may be weeping and it's like out of nowhere. Okay. Or you may struggle with resentment. You may also be very vague, irrational. You have irrational fears, or you spread or you engage in poisonous gossip. That's huge. So when you see a man who is deeply moody or irrational, emotional, he is often dealing with an unintegrated anima, which is the feminine intellectual force when it comes to your emotions. And when you see a woman who is overly opinionated or aggressive in her logic, she is often dealing with an unintegrated animus, which is the masculine intellectual force behind your emotions. So, you do shadow work to balance the anima and the animus. Again, anima is the feminine and the animus is the masculine to help you integrate your opposite energies so they work as a team rather than fighting for control. So I always say things like, you are at war with yourself. I can tell when someone is at war with themselves because they tend to struggle. I first of all, I see beyond the persona. I see beyond their ego. and I'm able to see their true self that wants to come out and the shadow that won't allow them to. And then there tends to always be an imbalance of masculine and feminine energy. And then that's when I'm able to see that their inner world is chaos, it's drama. It's when a person is at war with themselves. So if you feel like you're at war with yourself when it comes to your inner world, that your inner world is not balanced, there's no harmony, there's no peace, there's no joy, there's no happiness, there's no light. I'm not saying that it has to be all light because your shadow is there to protect you, but it's being um regulated in a way to where it's imbalanced and it's causing you to be self-destructive, which is causing you to be at war within your inner world. So, some things that you can do to help with getting on the same page with your inner world and not being at war, you have to identify the inner critic. And sometimes, again, because I mentioned this earlier, and this is why therapy is beautiful, getting a mentor coach is beautiful as well, because your therapist is going to be able to help you call out or become more aware of the fact that you have an imbalanced animus. They're going to be able to, they're going to show that, or they're going to be able to identify that at times, I don't know if y'all could hear the sirens, but it's a loud fire truck that just went by. So again, let me repeat that. So you have to identify that inner critic. You can get help by getting a therapist or a mentor coach. But they're going to be able to point out the fact that you have an imbalance animus, which is your masculine energy. They're going to be able to spot the shadow because you tend to be overly judgmental, rigid, or stuck. And you may carry should statements, which means you don't really have an open mind because you have this inner critic. So it's really good to write down these thoughts, to externalize them, and question their validity. So if you don't have a therapist, then you would have to do this just by yourself. Or you could get a therapist to help you externalize and question the validity of your inner critic, or you could get a therapist that could help you do that. But if you can't get either, then you're going to have to do that yourself. But you're going to have to be real with yourself. You're going to have to be real with yourself when it comes to your inner critic. Okay. And again, that starts with you creating a vulnerable, safe place. All right. Also, another way to help balance out the masculine and feminine intellectual force when it comes to your emotions is to track your moods. So, anima, which is the feminine energy, when you feel irrational, moody, sensitive, or vague, sit with the feeling without trying to fix it. Ask the emotion, what are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to reveal to me? Okay. What are you trying to reveal to me? Also, active imagination. Sometimes it's really good for you to visualize a dialogue between your inner masculine, your logic and your action, and your inner feminine, your intuition and your feelings. Ask them, what do they need from each other to feel supported, seen, loved, accepted, honored? That's huge. So you have to audit your projections as well to help you balance out your feminine and your masculine energy. Okay. So you have to notice what traits irritate you when it comes to others. If you hate bossy people, your animus your animus might be suppressed, which is your masculine energy. If you hate emotional people, your anima, which is your feminine energy, may be in your shadow, which means you may be suppressing your feminine energy or the feminine intellect that helps you with your emotions. So let me bring up this example because this was such a great example.
I finally got to see myself and it hurt. And when I say this, I say it from a place of when you're truly able to see yourself, it is leverage. Um, because when you see yourself clearly, you get to see something that you've been struggling with or battling with rise to the surface to the point where you could look back at everything and you'd be like, dang, like I've been doing this for a while, right? So mine was being impulsive. Um, I was a very impulsive person. And I'm talking about like if I didn't like something,
So what is she doing? She is recognizing a pattern that was keeping her stuck in a cycle. Now, I brought this up in my pattern recognition video, which I highly recommend that if you have not watched that, watch that video next. Bring a notepad, bring a journal. So she is identifying a behavioral pattern within herself, which is a part of her shadow. So that means she had to get past the persona, she had to get past her ego, she had to make that connection with self to get to the bottom of this shadow aspect when it comes to her behavior, which is causing her to have a pattern over her life that's keeping her stuck in a cycle. So she's breaking free out of this cycle by identifying this shadow trait, which is her being impulsive. And I love it.
um, I'm getting rid of it. I'm quitting it. If I wanted something, I'm doing it right then and there, or I'm going to find a way to get it done. And when I look back in my life, I would say ever since I got of age, up until age 18, I have been very impulsive. And it wasn't really until the end of last year where God was making this rise to the surface. And I mean to the surface to the point where like he needs me to see myself. He needs me to see what's really going on. And I have been
Now, I want to add that she is using a religious framework, which I believe she is Christian. Nothing wrong with that. Y'all know how I am. It's all about the consciousness for me. It is not about the framework. It's not about controlling others and what they choose for themselves when it comes to the framework that they want to operate in. Okay. I'm all about the conscious. So typically, if a person is trying to reach for their higher self or their best self, it doesn't really matter what framework they choose to use to do that, it all leads to the same place. So I'm more focused on her conscious, and her conscious is amazing. So you can talk to God and bring things to the surface. You can do your candle work and bring things to the surface. You can talk to your ancestors, God, and candle work. That's my favorite formula to bring things to the surface because candles are going to help you bring things to the surface very quickly. And then prayer creates that um inner dialogue with your spirit, and then you communicating with your ancestors also creates that inner dialogue when it comes to your spirit and being able to have that spiritual backing and support to help you bring things to the surface, and then you're well supported spiritually. It's a very beautiful experience, and that is what she's doing, but she's using Christianity as her framework to do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't care if you want to God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. Listen, Jesus can be her high priestess. The spirit can she can be holy within her spirit and she can still speak to God. So to me, that is the same formula. It's just within a different framework.
carrying that around with me since I was 18. So, like I said, like very impulsive. And when you're impulsive, you do things out of fear, you do things out of urgency, you do things out of incitement, right? And if you're not careful, most of the times these things may come with results, but they always keep you stuck, and then you end up repeating a cycle of basically the same thing. So, for me,
So again, she's saying that basically it keeps you stuck, which is why I said my formula: therapy, mentor coach, shadow work, manifestation, candle work. Because when you get a therapist or a mentor coach, they help you identify your blind spots when it comes to your self-awareness. That clears things. It removes blockages. Then your shadow work helps you remove blockages. And then your candle work clears energy as well on a spiritual level to where you can really release and let things go. And then it helps you manifest quicker. I'm literally teaching you how to manifest faster. So if there's a lifestyle that you want to live, there are huge rewards to shadow work. So that's the formula. So she's coming to this realization. She's getting herself unstuck and out of this cycle because honestly, now that she's reached this level of awareness, she's outgrown it.
At times, especially since I'm spiritually in tune and
And then this impulsiveness could be blocking her when it comes to things that she's wanting to call in through her manifestation work, like prayer, or just waiting on God to bless her. So, whatever her framework is, that's basically what she's waiting on. And she knows that she has to get herself unstuck and out of this cycle. And she knows that she has to get a better handle on her impulsiveness. It's not something that she has to completely get rid of, it's something that she has to get a better handle on. She has to learn how to manage it better so it's not working against her, it's working with her. Because at times being impulsive is great. Sometimes you have to be impulsive, take the lead, get things going so that you can move forward in your life. But she's noticing that it's actually doing the opposite that is keeping her stuck in this cycle that she's wanting to get out of so that she can level up and elevate. So she just has to rewire it and integrate it better within her shadow so that it can work as a protection when it comes to her self identity and her self esteem instead of it working against her, which is actually more self destructive, which is keeping her stagnant because this is not where she wants to be, and it may be causing her inner world to be at war or in chaos or drama or like maybe burnout.
sensitive. And I will say when you do start to walk with God, you know, you will start to get spiritually sensitive. So you'll start to spiritualize things, thinking that, you know, God said this or God said that when he really didn't. And that'll have you making decisions that weren't supposed to be made, because a decision that I made without me doing the proper step that I needed to take, um, which I knew I had to do the proper step, I didn't do it. So I end up making a very impulsive move. And basically, when I got settled in, I really realized how me making that move, me settling into that part of my life, is the price that I paid for the consequences that I reaped. And it's not anything bad. So I'll give you the example. Stayed, um, I basically ended up in an apartment that I didn't per se want to be at. And when I say be it, down to like the style of it, because I had a certain thing in mind. I wanted something like my last apartment. So all of the ones that I seen before, when I was looking, it was the reviews just weren't giving. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go move to, you know, here. And yeah, so I never came out to Houston to per se look like I had plans to do. So once I used the apartment locator and I seen the apartment that I'm staying in now on TikTok, I just was like, yeah, I'm gonna take it. And when I got here and I walked in the door the first day that I got my keys, I was just like, yeah, like it was like, yeah, and that's how I knew then that it went right. And then it wasn't until over time, when I'm settling in and settled in, that I started having a lot of problems. And it wasn't until the end of the year, beginning of this year, where I was able to see, like, you made a very impulsive decision, and God allowed you to stay because
Okay, so I'm gonna interrupt her. So basically she's coming to the realization that her shadow side when it comes to her impulsiveness kept her in a cycle that if she would have been more patient, faithful in her journey within herself, then she probably would have gotten the apartment that she wanted and it would have been new, like it would have been a new cycle, but instead she's still stuck in the same cycle. And this apartment that she impulsively signed the lease for showcased that when she did that decision, it kept her in the same cycle. But if she would have been more patient and if she would have had more faith and waited on divine timing, she would have started a new beginning in a new cycle instead of being stuck in the same cycle, but it's still a new beginning. And I talked about that in my pattern recognition video that sometimes you think you're having a new beginning because you get the new apartment, you get the new job, and you make the new friends. And then you realize that it's not a new beginning because you're still stuck in the same cycle. You may be experiencing a new place a new work environment, new friends, but you're still dealing with the same spirit within this new friend. You're still dealing with the same energy within that work environment. You're still dealing with the same issues within that apartment complex, or the apartment complex that you're in, or the apartment itself. It just doesn't match with your energy, with where you're trying to go. But because you unknowingly, impulsively signed the lease, now you're coming to the realization that you're seeing the pattern recognition, you're seeing the pattern, and you're able to identify, like, wait, I'm in the same cycle because I rushed this decision. So be careful about that. 2026, I told you all that your biggest challenge is going to be slowing down and being intentional, because it's a fire horse year. And it's great that you have all of this energy and you want to get so much done and you want to do so much, but you have to slow down and you have to be intentional, because you don't want to misstep and then make a choice or decision impulsively over intentionally. Because when you make things intentional, you're in alignment. When you make things impulsively, it takes you out of alignment. And that's what she's realizing. And she was hoping for a new beginning when it came to this apartment, but then she realized that she was just stuck in the same cycle. So, this is also how you quantum leap. This is how I quantum leaped. I quantum leaped on my birthday, March 23rd. I felt it. And I wanted to actually do that video first, but I decided to do this because it was requested. So I will be dropping that video as well. I'm probably going to drop that video next before I drop the vanity and the glamour mirror. I actually wanted you to have this video first before the glamour and the vanity mirror, because the glamour and the vanity work technique is a tool that's going to help you with your shadow work. It's something that's going to aid you with the shadow work. So I wanted you to have the shadow work video first. And then I'm going to talk about the quantum leaping that you can do when you use pattern recognition, and then you're able to get out of that loop and get unstuck and get out of that cycle into a new cycle. And when you get into a new cycle, you jump timelines. Okay. You jump timelines, you quantum leap, whatever you want to label it. That's what you're able to do. So she did not quantum leap, and she could have if she would have waited, if she would have been patient, if she would have trusted alignment over being impulsive. So keep that in mind this year, 2026. Please keep that in mind, because I want you all to get unstuck. I want you to get out of those past cycles. And I really want you to have that new beginning, because my collective, you really deserve it. So slow down, be intentional, and stay in alignment. Consistently choose alignment.
To break the lease, it was gonna be 2 months rent plus the 2 months that I got free. Then somebody was gonna try to take over the lease, and that fell through. So at this point, it's like, okay, well, I have to stay here. So it's like the thorn in my flesh, if you know that part of the scripture. To me, that applied to me, as in this was a thorn in my flesh for years. Like I said, since I was 18, and I have been carrying it with me. And now, instead of God taking it out like I wanted Him to do, because I wanted to just move and get out of here and be where I wanted to be, I didn't. I had to sit in it. And me sitting in it allowed me to see myself clearly, allowed me to see something that was a deep embedded root that I would have never knew about. Like, I didn't know that I was that impulsive until, like I said, towards the end of the year. But it didn't start getting louder until probably the month of December and January and now February. It's loud to the point where it's actually rose to the surface, to the point where it can be uprooted. So I said, I'm about to say is, a lot of the times we're doing things from survival mode. Making impulse decisions is from a survival mode. Survival mode is not what people think it is, like you're not having enough. Survival mode is a dysregulated nervous system. So when you make impulsive decisions, you have a dysregulated system, and the things that you do, you're doing them to not feel something, whether it's fear or you're feeling something like excitement, or you want something when you want it. And when you do that, you don't give God enough time to respond, or you just want to do what you want to do, and maybe you miss a step that you needed to take before you made the move. So what I would say is, sometimes the thing that's truly holding you back is something within yourself, which is, it always goes back to yourself and your patterns and the cycles. But until you actually know the root cause of something, that would be the only way you'll be able to uproot the problem and not be able to continue in the same pattern and behavior.
Let me play that part one more time.
Move. So what I would say is, sometimes the thing that's truly holding you back is something within yourself, which is, it always goes back to yourself and your patterns and the cycles. But until you actually know the root cause of something, that would be the only way you'll be able to uproot the problem and not be able to continue in the same pattern and behavior.
Okay, so this is a woman that is doing shadow work while also being, I believe she's religious. I want to say that she's religious. But if you grew up old school, your foundation when it comes to religion is no shadow work. But I feel like millennials have been creating, and some of the younger Gen Xers have been creating this new formula that you can be faith and shadow work. You could be religion and shadow work. So some people will come across and they are doing the work and they're in the Bible or they're in their religion. And then the majority though, a lot of times it's the opposite of that. But she is one of those rare ones where she is doing both. And I really commend her on that because um I'm not sure if she got therapy or something like that, but that is really helping her progress forward while also being religious. So it can happen. It's just a rare thing to see sometimes because oftentimes you'll see people blame the devil or see people not really want to address themselves in their most raw authentic form because they feel the shame because of their religious belief and the expectations that come with that. But she is different and I love that. So the last step when it comes to your shadow work and being able to balance out the outer world with the persona, the ego, the self, the shadow, the animus and the anima with the inner world versus your unconscious and your consciousness. Um, Another thing that you would need to do is journal. Dream journal, regular journal, journal, because you have to be able to pay attention to the figures of the opposite gender in your dreams, which is huge. So, like if you dream of a man and the man is acting a certain way, that could reveal the opposite when it comes to your either struggle with masculine energy or your struggle with feminine energy. So you need a dream journal to really unpack that. I highly recommend Blue Lotus. Blue lotus flower will help you dream, but be careful because if you have unconscious, unresolved fears and issues, it will also bring those things to the surface. Blue lotus flower is no freaking joke. Do not smoke marijuana when you do blue lotus. Like, don't smoke marijuana. Don't take THC at all because it counteracts the blue lotus to where it doesn't work as well. So you would have to fast from THC to really get the real benefit of the blue lotus in helping you unpack things through your dreams. And it will make your dreams very vivid to the point where you will remember them the next day, where you can have a dream journal next to your bed and you can write down your dreams. And I'm saying pay attention to the figures of the opposite gender in your dreams because it may be showing you things about yourself, because typically people outside of ourselves always mirror back things within ourselves, and you need to be able to unpack that and identify that. So pay attention to that when it comes to your dreams and you're starting to do your shadow work. They dreams often represent, or this type of dream may often represent the current state of your feminine and or your masculine energy and how they're trying to communicate with your conscious mind. So you just have to pay attention to that because that could help you with your shadow work. And then your dreams in general can help you with shadow work. It could help you with your introspection. It could bring forth things that you need to unpack and really think critically about and question within yourself. So make sure you introspect the things that you discover and the things that you question, and then also journal it. Also talk to your therapist about it, talk to a mentor coach about it or a counselor about it. Again, make sure it is a trusted, safe individual. So that's pretty much all that I have regarding this video. And again, Typically, you come from a foundation of religion, which always led to shame. Not all, but the ones who haven't done the shadow work, that's typically your foundation. And then what you're transforming into is doing the shadow work, embracing your true self so that you can transform. Okay, that's what this is all about. So let me show this diagram one more time. Again, this is Dr. Carl Jung, who came up with this human psyche diagram, and I thought it was amazing. So again, this is the outer world, this is the outer world. This is your inner world. This is the persona. This is how you are perceived by the outer world, or this is the mask that you wear. This mask or this persona protects your ego, and it doesn't have to be bad things. It doesn't. Your persona can just be how you express yourself. It could be your aesthetic. Your ego serves a huge purpose. It just needs to be healthy. Your persona needs to be healthy, your ego needs to be healthy, but your ego protects your self identity and your self esteem. So you have your persona, which protects your ego. And then when you have a healthy ego, it protects your self identity and your self esteem. And then your shadow has your back. When you embrace your shadow, you develop loyalty with self, where you will always have your own back. And this aids as protection, because if you are balanced with logic, with your masculine energy, with animus, then you will always have your back. And when you're balanced within your anima, which is your intuition and your feelings, you will always have your own back. This builds self trust. When you develop a healthy relationship with your shadow, it builds self trust. You tend to be logical. You tend to be rational. You tend to not jump to extremes or jump to conclusions without truly assessing. And you use your anima, which is your feminine energy, to feel, to be in tune with your sensitivity so that you can trust and receive your intuition. And this is what will create the foundation where you have your own back. And then this all protects your inner world. It protects your mentality. So if you're the type of person where you struggle with depression or like mental health issues or anxiety, these things, if you work on the persona, the ego, the self, the self-esteem and self-identity, the shadow, the masculine and feminine energy, your inner world becomes peaceful, harmony, love, flow, creativity, everything that makes you feel good on the inside. And it boosts your confidence. So your persona, it tends to take an upgrade where your aesthetic changes. You want to outwardly express yourself in a raw, authentic way. And again, you will be projected on, but your ego protects you. A healthy ego is going to protect you when you get projected on because of your persona. And then your ego protects your self esteem and your identity. And then you always have your shadow right there to have your back. And then your inner world, no one actually gets access to that. When you work on yourself like this, you're not easily to get manipulated, used, taken advantage of. You are able to defend yourself, assert yourself, you know yourself. Oh, I wrote this in my phone, in my notes. Let me pull it up before I end this because this is great. Ooh, people will try to convince you that you don't know what you're doing or that you don't know what you're talking about, all because they lack your insight, your knowledge, and they lack your vision. But the whole time, you know exactly what you're doing and you know exactly what you're talking about. Why? Because you did the work and you are now in a position where you can trust yourself. So when people try to make you feel small or people try to make you feel stupid, you can stand confidently in who you are because you did the work on yourself. It's not coming from a place of false confidence, false vision, knowledge, knowing is coming from a real place because you really did the work. So I hope this helps you on your journey. This has changed my life. And I'm going to try to end this without getting emotional, but it has really changed my life. So I hope this helps you. Also, look into Carl Jung, look into the Jungian psychology because he has so many books out here. And I believe that that can help you on your journey as well, depending on what you're wanting to learn. But he typically breaks down this diagram and he has so many different books with because again, you know, you have a system within a system. So he breaks down the conscious versus the unconscious, the conscious collective versus the unconscious collective. And you know, I always say too that a lot of people get upset that why do I have to do all of this when bad people in the world still are able to reap the rewards even though they're not a good person and they don't have to do the self work and self improve. A lot of times those people that you see get rewarded in that way, they're a part of the unconscious collective where they're not tapped in consciously when it comes to integrity, morals and things like that. They're not consciously tapped into that. But if you are, and I don't know, it could have been your childhood or your upbringing. If you are, then you are going to have to put in the work to reap the benefits. So you're going to have to put in the work to work through karmic energy where things are placed in your life and it's challenging, it's adverse, but it's there to help you grow and to help you elevate. And it's because you're a part of the conscious collective. And sometimes when you see people out here get certain things, they're a part of the unconscious collective. So oftentimes they don't really face accountability or uh they don't really face karma because they're a part of the collective that's not conscious in that way. So if you came here conscious, the work is always harder for us. And that's just the reality. Life is unfair. I don't know why it's this way. I've been wanting to dive a little deeper into that. But when people are conscious, they do face repercussions, consequences, karma, accountability, and things like that. But it's only if they're conscious, and not everyone out here is conscious. And those that you see are still able to reap certain rewards and things like that are the unconscious. So just be careful of that, or they may not even be human. That's a conversation for another day. So I hope this helps. Thank you for supporting. And if you're new to Patreon, thank you for joining. So, next up, I will be doing the It's Time to Get Moving collective message that I already had in the chamber, but I decided to drop this video first. And then after I drop that video, then I'm going to do the glamour and I'm going to do the vanity mirror video. And then after that, I'm going to do a tutorial on how to create a fitness jar where you're able to sweeten up your fitness journey. It's very similar to the honey jar when we do like self-love and things like that. You want to sweeten up how you see yourself and you view yourself. You want to work on your self-worth and you want to work on your self-confidence and your body image. Like we sweeten those things up. But what about sweetening up your fitness journey, your healthy journey, your nutritional journey? I'm going to show you how to create a fitness jar for that. So stay tuned. I have so many things that I'm dropping on Patreon. So be patient, but I will be dropping some new content pretty frequently, but not to the point where I'm causing myself to burn out. Because if I burn myself out, y'all won't see me for a while. So I'm trying to pace and take my time, but I will be dropping on Patreon. So thank you for joining, and I hope to see you in my next one.